Some people are born into comfort. Others are shaped by loss. Michael Carter belonged to the second kind. At 38, Michael carried life on his shoulders a way some men carried confidence. Quietly, without complaint. He lived in a small rented apartment on the edge of Columbus, Ohio, where the walls were thin and the future felt thinner. Every object inside that apartment had a story of survival: second-hand furniture, mismatched plates, and a calendar on the fridge where every bill was circled in red. Michael was a single father. His wife had died 6 years earlier in a highway accident on her way home from work. One moment she was alive, complaining about traffic. The next, she was gone, leaving Michael alone with a 4-year-old daughter and a silence that never truly lifted. That daughter, Emily, was now 10. She had her mother's eyes and Michael's resilience. She didn't ask for much, never complained when dinner was simple or when Michael worked late. She learned early that love didn't always come with ease, but it always came with effort. Michael worked as a maintenance technician at a commercial complex. It was physical, underpaid work with unpredictable hours. Some weeks he worked overtime just to keep the lights on. Other weeks he prayed nothing broke down because missing a single shift meant falling behind. Still, every morning, he woke Emily up gently. Rise and shine, kiddo. And every night, no matter how tired he was, he read to her until her eyes closed. That was his life. Not glamorous, but honest. That particular evening, rain streaked down the windshield as Michael drove Emily home from school. She was quiet, staring out the window. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Just hungry." Michael smiled. "I know a place." They stopped at a small family-style restaurant just off the highway. It wasn't fancy, just warm lights, soft chatter, and the smell of fresh coffee. For Michael, it was a rare treat. He'd received news that morning that gave him something dangerous: hope. A former co-worker had told him about an opening at Northline Industries, a massive logistics and infrastructure company expanding in the Midwest. The position offered benefits, steady hours, and growth. Michael didn't have a degree, but he had experience, integrity, discipline. Tomorrow, he planned to apply. They took a booth near the back. Emily slid into her seat, immediately reaching for crayons. Michael loosened his jacket, letting himself breathe for the first time all day. Then the tension began. Near the center of the restaurant, a woman sat alone. She looked ordinary: dark coat, no jewelry, hair tied back neatly. She could have been anyone. Across from her stood a man whose presence filled the room in the worst way. Expensive suit, sharp voice, impatient movements. "You think you can question my authority?" the man snapped loudly. "Do you know who I am?" The woman remained seated, calm. "I'm not questioning your authority," she said evenly. "I'm asking why your team has lost 30 employees in 6 months." The man scoffed. "Because weak people don't last." The waitress nearby stiffened, clearly uncomfortable. Michael felt something tighten in his chest. The woman spoke again, still controlled. "Leadership isn't about fear." That's when the man slammed his hand on the table. "Don't lecture me." Emily flinched. Michael stood up. "Hey," he said, not raising his voice. "That's enough." The man turned slowly, scanning Michael with contempt. "Sit down. This doesn't concern you." "It concerns everyone when you talk like that." The man laughed. "You look like you can barely afford to eat here." Michael stepped closer, positioning himself between the man and the woman. "You're done," Michael said. "Leave." For a split second, silence swallowed the room. Then the man lashed out. The slap landed hard. Michael staggered, hand flying to his face. The sound echoed like a crack of thunder. Gasps erupted. Emily cried out his name. Michael didn't shout, didn't retaliate. He straightened slowly and looked at the man. "If hurting someone makes you feel important," Michael said calmly, "that says more about you than me." The man cursed and stormed out. The woman stood frozen, eyes wide, not with fear, but something deeper. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You didn't deserve that." Michael shrugged, forcing a smile. No one deserves to be treated like that. He returned to his booth, holding Emily close until her shaking stopped. The woman watched him for a long moment before quietly leaving. Michael never asked her name. He didn't know she was Victoria Hale. He didn't know she was a founder and majority shareholder of Northline Industries. And he didn't know that one act of courage had just crossed his path with destiny. The next morning, Michael stood outside a towering glass building, resume folded carefully in his hand. He wore his only suit, clean, but worn at the cuffs. Emily's lucky bracelet rested in his pocket. Inside, everything felt intimidating. Polished floors, confident voices, people who looked like they belonged. When the receptionist smiled and said, "The executive board would like to meet shortlisted candidates personally." Michael's stomach dropped. Moments later, a door opened, and time stopped. The woman from the restaurant stepped out. Only now. She wore a tailored charcoal suit, heels clicking softly against marble. Her posture commanded attention. The room shifted around her. Michael's breath caught. "You," he said quietly. She smiled. "Hello, Michael." "You're?" "Victoria Hale." The CEO. Michael froze. I'm sorry about last night. I didn't mean." "Please," she said gently. "You did exactly what you meant to." Inside her office, sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. Victoria studied Michael carefully, not like a boss, but like someone searching for truth. "I go places without my name," she said. "I watch how people treat those they think don't matter." She leaned forward. "And last night, you mattered." Michael shook his head. "I just couldn't stand by." "That's leadership," she said. "And that's why you're here." He swallowed. "I don't have a degree." She smiled. "I have plenty of those. What I don't have enough of is character." She slid his resume back to him. "You start Monday." Michael stayed, stunned. "You're serious?" "I've never been more certain." Weeks passed. Michael worked harder than he ever had. Not out of fear, but pride. He treated everyone with dignity. Productivity improved. Morale changed. Victoria noticed. She visited quietly, observing how Michael listened, how he corrected without humiliation, how people trusted him. One evening, she found herself back at that same restaurant. Moments later, Michael walked in with Emily. "Miss Victoria." Emily smiled brightly. Victoria's face softened. They sat together, not as CEO and employee, but as people. "Why did you really go undercover?" Michael asked. Victoria stared into her coffee. "Because success can isolate you. I wanted to remember what it felt like to be human." She looked at him. "And you reminded me." As they walked out, Emily asleep in Michael's arms, Victoria realized something she had forgotten while building an empire. True power isn't control. It's compassion. And Michael learned that sometimes standing up for someone doesn't just change their life. It changes yours.